A Toronto police officer is facing criminal charges in a shooting that left a black man seriously injured earlier this year. The lawyer for that man is now speaking to the media. Let's listen in.
He feels relief knowing that what he experienced has come to light, and the SIU, at least as far as he can tell, agrees that what happened to him was wrong. Simultaneously, though, he feels that the way in which he was treated is deeply troubling, and it lays bare the inadequacies of our current system of policing, where in many cases, Black and Indigenous Torontonians are met with suspicion and violence. He almost lost his life because of it. It is no coincidence that we are back in the very room that we sat with Mr. and Mrs. Ogilvie just 8 months ago, the family of another young black man who experienced terrible police violence. Both Mr. Ogilvie and Mr. Fowlin represent the human face of systemic issues. They are individual examples of a problem we have collectively failed to address. This problem was confirmed by Toronto Police just over a year ago when then Chief Raymer reported that Toronto Police data demonstrates that Black people face a disproportionate amount of use of force and are more likely to have an officer point a gun at them, whether perceived armed or unarmed, than white people in the same situations. We know this problem exists and persists, but our elected officials refuse to act. Instead of rethinking policing responses to dynamic situations or ones that involve a meaningful level of mental health crisis response experience, Premier Ford reduced the educational requirement to become a police officer. We expect so much of police officers and give them our ultimate trust. They should be tasked appropriately to meet the challenge. Instead of prioritizing funding for mental health intervention teams, former Mayor Tory increased the police budget. Recently, we were involved in a mental health crisis for another client who earlier had experienced police violence. Despite calling around to alternative city mental health crisis teams, we were told that our client was not in the right catchment area. A person experiencing trauma from police thus had to rely on police to intervene. Thankfully, officers in that situation handled it well, and we thank them for that. But representatives from our office were in attendance, as was our client's family. Having your lawyer and entire family present to ensure your safety is neither feasible, nor should it be the norm. We need to retask police and aggressively fund trained mental health intervention teams in Toronto to respond to situations that require compassion and understanding. The situation involving Mr. Fowlin so quickly escalated to taser and firearm use has, we hope, been the basis of the SIU's conclusions, though we look forward to learning more from the SIU. Yes, Mr. Fowlin was in possession of a knife, though it appears the SIU agrees he was not presenting a threat to officers warranting the use of force, which included the discharge of the firearm. Perhaps an approach to an unusual situation in a park that morning could have been properly responded to with rapport building and de-escalation techniques. Instead, a man was shot. There are charges in this case, and that is a significant moment. We see these charges as a positive step forward. However, we eagerly await learning through the SIU investigative report and the criminal proceedings what role the other multiple officers on scene played in this interaction. We are interested in what gave rise to the charges against Officer Davis, and what, if any, charges were considered against him and others. Most are aware of how rare it is to see charges brought against police officers in similar cases. One day before the SIU announced charges in this case, investigations into 2 other police shootings in the province resulting in death were concluded without findings of wrongdoing. The day before. It will be important to determine what was different in this case that led to comparatively serious charges being laid. What role, if any, did body camera footage play in the SIU's decision? When will the public be made aware of the circumstances that gave rise to the serious finding of criminality here against a public servant? While we do not advocate for needless displays of state violence perpetrated against Black people, we think there ought to be a greater public opportunity, public accountability mechanism at play. In the administration of accountability procedures against police, we need greater public oversight.